Welcome to 6th grade math. Review the math lab. So 1/3 times 3/4. Find 1/3 times 3/4. Find 1/3 of 3/4. Begin with a square to represent 1. Shade 3/4 of the square yellow. And then shade 1/3 of the square blue. The part that was shaded both yellow and blue appears green. 1/12 of the square is shaded green. So 1/3 times 3/4 equals 3/12. Or if we simplify, which we always will, it's going to be 1/4. The product of two proper fractions will always be less than either fraction. Multiplying a fraction by a fraction is taking part of a part. A chameleon's body is about half the length of its tongue. A certain chameleon has a tongue that is 2/3 of a foot long. The overlapping region represents the length of the chameleon, which is 1/2 of 2/3, or 1/2 times 2/3. So we have 1/2 and 2/3. So refer to the model. What fraction represents 1/2 times 2/3? So there's two green parts out of 6 parts total. So 2/6. And if we find the greatest common factor of 2, we can simplify that to 1/3. Explain the relationship between the numerators of the problem and the numerator of the product. The product of the numerators is equal to the numerator of the product. It means when we multiply the numerators, we'll get the product. We'll get the numerator of the product or the answer. What do you notice about the denominators of the product and the denominators of the problem and the denominators of the product? The product of the denominators is equal to the denominator of the product. So all that means is we're going to multiply the denominators and we'll get the product. Multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators. And an example in numbers is 2/5 times 1/2 would be the same as 2 times 1 over 5 times 2. And in algebra, a over b times c over d equals a times c over b times d, where b and d are not 0, because remember, you cannot divide by 0. So if you have 0 in the denominator, it is undefined. Vocabulary review. A factor. Two or more numbers that are multiplied together to form a product. Example, 1, 2, 3, and 6 are all factors of 6. Multiply fractions. 1/3 times 1/4. So 1/3 times 1/4, we'll multiply the numerators, 1 times 1. And then we'll multiply the denominators, 3 times 4. So if we simplify that or multiply it out, we get 1/12. Check your progress. 1/2 times 3/5. Multiply the numerators, 1 times 3 over, we're going to multiply the denominators, 2 times 5, so we get 3/10. 1/3 times 3/4. Multiply the numerators, 1 times 3, and then multiply the denominators, 3 times 4. We get 3/12, and we can find the greatest common factor of 3, and we get 1/4. 2/3 times 5, 6. Multiply the numerators, 2 times 5. Multiply the denominators, 3 times 6. That gives us 10 over 18. If we find the greatest common factor of 2, that'll give us 5/9. Scaffolding questions. How would you find half of these soccer balls? You count them, and there are 6, and half of 6 is 3. So if we find the half, what equation would you write to show half of 6? So we need to write a math equation. We could do 1/2 times 6 equals 3. Remember that an equation has an equal sign. How would you find 2/3 of the soccer balls? Divide the soccer balls into 3 groups. count the number of balls in 2 of the groups. And that would be 4. What equation would you write to show 2/3 of 6? 2/3 times 6 equals 4. Multiply a fraction by a whole number. First, write the whole number as a fraction. Multiply fractions and whole numbers. So 3/5 times 4. And we have 3/5. And we have 4. So 4 is all of them in yellow, and then 3/5 are blue. And we would write 4 as 4/1, because 4 and 4/1 are the same value, and we need to have a fraction to multiply against the other fraction. Then if we multiply 3 times 4 over 5 times 1, which is why we do convert the whole number 4 into an improper fraction, then we can simplify 12/5. And if we simplify, we get 2 2/5, mixed number. How is the model 4 times 3/5 similar to repeated addition? Well, we have 4 times 3/5. Notice that each stack is 3/5 of it are green, and there are 4 of them. So it would be the same as adding 3/5 plus 3/5 plus 3/5 plus 3/5. Multiply fractions and whole numbers. So we have 2/3 times 6. First thing we're going to do is convert the whole number into an improper fraction, 6/1. 2/3 times 6/1 is going to be the same as 2 times 6 over 3 times 1. If we simplify or multiply 12/3 and then simplify, we get 4. 12 over 3 is same as 4/1 or 4. 3/4 times 5. We're going to rewrite the whole number 5 as an improper fraction, 5/1. 3/4 times 5/1. And then we can multiply the numerators, 3 times 5, and the denominators, 4 times 1. And we'll get 15/4, which we will now simplify into or convert into a mixed number, 3 3/4. 3 times 1/2. Write the whole number 3 as an improper fraction, 3/1. 3/1 times 1/2. We multiply that out, 3 times 1, 1 times 2. And we get 3/2, and then if we rewrite that as a mixed number, we get 1 1/2. If the numerators and denominators have a common factor, you can simplify before you multiply. So 3/4 times 5/6. Are there any common factors between any of the numerators and any of the denominators? And so we'll put them over the numerators over the denominators, 3 times 5 over 4 times 6. And we see that there is a common factor of 3 with 3 and 6. So we can divide 3 by 3 and get 1, divide 6 by 3 and get 2, and then we'll multiply 1 times 5 and get 5, and 2 times 4 to get 8, and that is our answer. So check your progress. We're going to simplify first and then multiply. We have 3/4 times 4/9, so we'll put 3 times 4 over 4 times 9. Hopefully you recognize that 4 can simplify out, and so can 3 and 9. So 3 goes into 3 1 times, 3 goes into 9 3 times, 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 4 once, and now it's a lot easier for us to multiply. We get 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3. 5/6 times 9/10. We have a couple of different sets of greatest common factors. So we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 3 for 6 and 9, and then by 5 for 5 and 10. And 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 10 twice, 3 goes into 9 3 times, 3 goes into 6 twice, and now we can multiply across. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 2 is 4, and we're done there. Now we have 3/5 times 10. And we will rewrite the whole number 10 as an improper fraction, 10 over 1. And we'll rewrite that problem again as 3 times 10 over 5 times 1. And we have a greatest common factor of 5. So 5 goes into 10 twice. 5 goes into 5 once. Now we'll multiply across. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. We have 6 over 1, which is an improper fraction, so we'll convert that to a whole number, 6. Evaluate expressions. Evaluate AB if A equals 2/3 and B equals 3/8. So all we're going to do is plug in 2/3 for A and 3/8 for B, and now we have a multiplication problem with two fractions. 2/3 times 3/8, and now we have 2 times 3 over 3 times 8, and we have a couple of sets of greatest common factors that we can simplify. So greatest common factor of 2 and 8 is 2. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once, and we end up, if we multiply across, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 4 is 4, and that's our answer, 1/4. Evaluate 3/4 C if C equals 2/5. So remember, 3/4 is a coefficient of the variable C, so that is joined together by multiplication. 3/4 C, if we plug in 2/5 for C, is the same as 3/4 times 2/5. And if we rewrite that as 3 times 2 over 4 times 5, we have a greatest common factor of 2. So 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. Now it looks like we can multiply across. So 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 5 is 10, and that should be our final answer. Evaluate 5A if A equals 3/10. Remember that 5 is a coefficient of A, so it's 5 times A, or 5A. So we're going to plug in 3/10 for A. So we get 5 over 1, because we're going to convert the whole number 5 into an improper fraction. So we can multiply it times the fraction of 3/10, which is A. And we can multiply 5 times 3 over 1 times 10. We have a greatest common factor of 5. So 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 10 twice. And if we multiply across, 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. So we have 3 halves, which is an improper fraction. So we'll convert that to a mixed number of 1 and 1/2. Additional examples, 1/5 times 1/6. If we multiply across, 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 6 is 30, and that is simplified. 5/8 times 7 over times 7, so we're going to convert the whole number into an improper fraction. We'll get 5/8 times 7 over 1, and if we multiply that out, we get 5 times 7 is 35, 8 times 1 is 8, and now if we convert that to a mixed number, we'll get 4 and 3/8, because 4 times 8 is 32, plus 3 is 35. 3/7 times 2/9. We can simplify the 3's. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 9 3 times. That is the only thing we can simplify. We multiply 1 times 2 to get 2, and 7 times 3 to get 21, and we end up with 2 over 21. Algebra, evaluate PQ if P equals 3/4 and Q equals 8/9. PQ can also be stated as P times Q, so if we plug in 3/4 for P and 8/9 for Q, we get 3/4 times 8/9. And if we multiply 3 times 8 over 4 times 9, we have a couple sets of greatest common factors. So the greatest common factor of 3 and 9 is 3. We can simplify that. And 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 9 3 times. And then we also have the greatest common factor of 4 and 8 is 4. So 4 goes into 8 twice, 4 goes into 4 once, and if we multiply across, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3. Study tip. You can multiply some fractions mentally. So if we have 1/3 of 3/8, we get 1/8. 2/3 of 3/8, we get 2/8, or 1/4. And there is your homework today. So please head on over to Google Classroom to submit this, and have a great day, and I'll see you in class.